Hello, YouTube audience. This is Antonin Fiore, the host of the Crimson Pill radio programs. I want to share with you something I've found in the course of doing some research on Comet Elenin for some of my recent radio shows. I'm using the Starry Night software, and this is an astronomical configuration that's going to occur on September 29th, so just a couple of months away. And what I found interesting about it is that it would seem that Elenin, along with the Sun and Moon and a couple of the planets, really fulfill, if you will, the contents of Revelation chapter 12 and most of the verses throughout chapter 12, almost as though it's fulfilling, if you will, prophecy. The signs just point very exactly toward what we find in Revelation chapter 12. Now, what you're seeing on the screen now, I have set our view for Washington, D.C. Really, anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere would have this same configuration. This is, I've set the time for 11:11 a.m. Some folks out there, you know the significance of 11:11. I've chosen that arbitrarily. This could be a couple hours earlier or later. It would be the same. And I've hidden the daylight. So yes, it is 11:11 a.m., but I have used the software to deaden the daylight so that we can see the configuration. Now I'm going to begin by adding the boundaries here, the labels also of the configurations, the constellations, and then I'm going to add the stick figures also. In just a moment, I'm going to add an illustration that gives you a very exact picture of what this constellation of Virgo looks like and how she seemingly fulfills Revelation chapter 12. At this point, I'm going to read from chapter 12. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now, at this moment, I have the software set for September 23rd. And what I'd like you to see is, as I move this timing forward, the software, watch as Elenin is making its path, making its way up along the length of the constellation of Virgo. Now it's the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, and you're also noticing right here that the moon, it's in a new moon phase, so it's hard to see, but this is the moon, and you notice that when I reach the 29th, that we have the sun here, Elenin up at the top or the head of Virgo, and the moon down here at her feet. I'm going to add in some labels. I'm going to add in the labels for the comets, and here of course we do see Elenin once again very visibly. I'm going to add the labels for the planets because this is also important. We have here in the constellation Virgo two planets, Saturn and Venus, that are right in the midsection, if you will, of Virgo. And then, of course, we have the moon once again that is down here at her feet. Now, to make this even more significant, what I'm about to do is turn our focus to just the constellation of Virgo, and I'm adding that illustration. I'm going to help clean this up a little bit by getting rid of these other stick figures and labels for a moment. And also I'm going to remove the labels for the comets to make it a little easier to see. Here it is, September 29th, and what we have, I'm reading again Revelation chapter 12. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and we see the sun right here, almost as though it's a cloak on her back. A woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and the moon again only on this day, a day earlier or a day later, it's out of position. And upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And what we have is Elenin, which has made its way now to her head, and with the tail of Elenin, this would appear in the sky like a tiara, for example, like she's wearing a crown. And even if some folks are wondering, yeah, but the Revelation 12 says a crown of 12 stars, well, if I zoom in to this neighborhood, we do in fact begin to see some of the stars that are in place here. I'm going to add the labels for stars. And sure enough, in her head, when we zoom in, there are 12 stars in Virgo's head. When I zoom in this far, we lose the illustration itself. But as I begin to pull the zoom back out, you'll see clearly that is Virgo's head. There are, in fact, 12 stars there. But I happen to think that the text is more likely so referring to Elenin in that position, and how it appears to be a tiara, or a crown, if you will, on her head. Now, what else is important? Well, as we continue with Revelation 12, verse 2, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. Now, I mentioned once again that Elenin makes its path along the way. If I move back a few days earlier, we see that Elenin is moving down near her face, such that the tail of Elenin very well could appear to be tears, that she's weeping, in accordance with verse 2. She cried, she being with child cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And what about this child, you say, that she is crying about, that she's travailing in birth? Well, here in her midsection, in her womb, we see that Virgo, the woman, has 2 planets, and point in fact, it's going to be Venus that is the child that's being born, because you'll notice as I move the clock forward, the calendar rather, the 30th, October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, that in fact Venus passes out of the womb and is born. And the other thing that's very significant about this configuration, back to September 29th once again, is that we have right next to Venus, the child being born, we have Saturn. Now, why is Saturn important? Well, I'll continue reading from Revelation 12, now in verse 3. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. Well, Saturn, for those who have some knowledge of occultism, esotericism, Saturn has always been regarded as a dragon. And in fact, Saturn also is connected to the figure that we call from history Kronos. Now, Kronos, if you know from esotericism, Kronos was part of his legend is that because of prophecy that he faced, that one of his children would kill him, that Kronos, or Saturn, would wait each time that he was about to become a father, that he was about to have a child born. Saturn would wait right nearby, waiting to devour the child as soon as it was born. And as we continue in Revelation 12, verse 4, and his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. That's right. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And so again, on September 29th, we have seemingly the perfect fulfillment of these first 4 verses of Revelation 12, because we have the woman who is clothed with the sun, and the moon at her feet, and upon her head a crown, this tiara created by Elenin's tail. In the absence of Elenin in this position, this would mean nothing. Virgo would have no crown on her head, and in the previous couple of days she would not have been weeping or crying, travailing in childbirth. Just a few days earlier or later, and you would not have Venus, the child, waiting to be born right in the womb. Likewise, Saturn would be out of position, so the dragon would not be waiting to devour the child as soon as it's born. And likewise, just a day earlier or a day later, you also do not have the moon in its correct position under her feet, fulfilling the first verse of Revelation 12. And so I think it's very significant, it's worth our notice to see that Elenin is fulfilling this prophecy, if you will, or fulfilling the details of Revelation 12, verses 1 through 4, in conjunction with the moon and with Saturn and Venus and the sun. It's quite of a convergence of these details from Revelation 12. And now, just for a moment, I'm going to once again move our calendar earlier. We're going to go earlier from September 29th, and you're going to see Elenin changes its position down this direction. Here, Elenin is seemingly in conjunction with Venus, with the child waiting to be born. And we see that the moon and the sun, well, the sun is still relatively in close position, but the moon is completely out of the picture. But as we move, at this moment I'm on September 22nd, if we move to the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, now we see the moon coming into place. We see Venus and Saturn coming into place. The 28th, and now the 29th. Elenin then makes the crown on her head. The moon is at her feet. The sun is, cloaking the woman. Venus is waiting to be born. Saturn, the dragon, or Kronos, is waiting to devour the child as soon as it's born. Now as I move to September 30th, we still see Elenin, but it's sliding out of position. The moon is already out of position. October 1st. 2nd, Venus, the child, is being born. October 3rd, etc. Folks, at this stage I want to pause and try to put some things into context. My purpose in preparing this video and showing the astronomical consideration from September 29th, which I now have displayed once again on screen, it is not to propose that Elenin represents to us the end of the world, the apocalypse. No, rather and quite contrary. It's my belief that Revelation 12 and this configuration, which I find to be incredibly specific in terms of completing, if you will, what symbolism and visualization that Revelation 12 provides us. I do not see that as representing the end of the world, but I think that we can find from Scripture that these passages oftentimes provide signposts, if you will, for us about things to be aware of in the future. In other words, I think that rather than being the end of the world or of some event, this maybe is a harbinger that points toward the beginning or the coming of something. Elenin will not make its closest approach to the Earth, be at its closest point to the Earth, until about the 16th or 17th of October. And here at September 29th, Elenin is still on its way to its closest approach with Comet 45P Honda. I don't think that those objects will have an interaction with one another, but yet we also don't know what Elenin will do after it has made its closest pass to the Sun, which is about the 10th of September. If it will remain intact, will it be broken up into fragments? Could some of those fragments have an alteration to their trajectory that's significant enough to mean that there may be some debris that we will face, perhaps? It's also worth mentioning that as Elenin has made its closest pass to the Earth on the 16th or 17th of October, that within about 2 weeks roughly following that, I think at its peak was around November the 2nd, Earth, on the course of our orbit around the Sun, will wind up passing through, if you want to call it the tail of the comet. If it has remained intact, it would be maybe just the tail. Could there be a debris field of sorts, if you will, if Elenin has been disrupted or broken up after it's made its pass near the Sun? These are things we're not sure of, but I still do believe that none of these will represent catastrophic experiences of any sort here on Earth. Instead, I think that Comet Elenin represents for us a harbinger or a sign that we should be paying more attention to what's happening in the sky, and that what Revelation 12 points us toward is to become more aware, more informed, more educated for events that are to happen down the road.